We're going to be joined now by basically everyone you've heard from here, including Jerome and Paul and Candida from Scality, Chris and Carol from HPE, James and Joey, our independent folks who you heard during that panel discussion, as well as the Tech Field Day delegates themselves. So all of these are independent technical influencers with blogs and podcasts, and they record videos, and they're tweeting right now, actually. If you go to techfieldday.com, you can learn more about who these folks are, but I'm going to turn it over to them now to ask some questions and get some points clarified. So Tech Field Day delegates, which of you wants to start off? Maybe Larry, this is a good time to ask your question.
The thing that I was questioning about is ARTESCA from a deployment perspective. I know obviously Kubernetes is the thing, right? But for customers that are doing things like HashiCorp Nomad and some other things, are we seeing, or has there been any momentum with something like ARTESCA that's being deployed outside of Kubernetes and these other container management platforms?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think we've been really focused on Kubernetes here at the start. I've heard lots of discussions around, other frameworks for deployment, including HashiCorp. It's very popular. We're going to keep our eyes open. I think right now it's supporting the immediate set of Kubernetes distributions. That's really key for us. But we're great listeners, right? And we deliver the software in an agile manner. So I'll keep an eye out or an ear out for HashiCorp. And I think it's certainly possible that we'll find a way to integrate with that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like I say, it's just more of a question of, it makes sense to start with the hot thing, and it's not anything new. We all know that, but that makes perfect sense. And thank you.
So one of the questions I had, we were talking earlier about portability of Kubernetes as being extremely important to its adaptability and adoption rate. So the replica capabilities within ARTESCA, how is that? I mean, is it kind of outside the pure object storage perspective, but it's got some sort of workflow characteristic, or how does this all fit together?
Yeah, so I think that was Ray. Hi, Ray. You may be referring to data replication at the ARTESCA layer. Indeed, that is above. That's a data service that we provide. So it's one of the set of containerized services running in our architecture. There's a set of background processing queues that know how to do asynchronous processing of events. One of those asynchronous events is replication. So as you add an object to a bucket, what do? We queue up an object somewhere in a queue, in a background queue. A background process takes over and takes care of replicating that to its target. That's out of band from the application, so the application gets control back. But we are managing that in our services layer, really within the architecture, above Kubernetes, but within our architecture.
And the services layer is some service running in the cloud? Is that how?
No, all of it is running locally in ARTESCA. So all of our services are deployed and managed on the Kubernetes. And again, think of it as a stack, right? But the stack is now containerized, microservices and services, but it starts with data services, multi-cloud, and then all the way down to storage. That's really, kind of the cloud native model that we're talking about here.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to bring a question forward from the Expo audience is still watching. And the question is a basic one, but it's an important one. When is this available from HPE?
May 4th.
May 4th.
May the 4th be with you.
Awesome.
You remember.
Thank you.
So James, I have a question based on your experience with developers and practitioners. So you spend a lot of time with them. With ARTESCA, it feels like this is aimed more at the enterprise IT central buying function rather than the devs themselves. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that frankly both roles are necessary. I think one thing that happened with Kubernetes early on was that it was you had to be able to do everything. So you had you practically had to be writing it in order to use it. And I think we're now beginning to see a little bit more specialization. I mean, you don't want all of your developers having to mess around necessarily with YAML and Helm charts and everything else. Perhaps they should just be focusing on the business applications that they're writing. So I think that there is room for, and we're beginning to see a bit of a separation of concerns. There's an understanding that the Kubernetes developer experience has not been that great. So we're seeing investments there. But by the same token, how do we take the skills we have and make them relevant in these new cloud native infrastructures. So certainly, if from a software perspective, there is an argument for operator-centric tooling because there are going to be operators that are managing some of this stuff. That said, hey, I mean, it's dark mode, so that's a good start if you want to appeal to developers. So yeah, I think that there is some room for specialization, and there's always going to be room, I believe, for admins. You can do all the automation you want, but you need to be able to make people productive that are not going to every KubeCon and are not absolutely deep in the weeds. So I think there's a bit of both, and one of the big trends over the next couple of years will be more specialized development environments running on Kubernetes, but also operators being able to do a wider set of things. The jobs change, but that's not to say that the people we've got can't learn these new platforms and be valuable in these sorts of contexts.
This is Jerome here. I'd like to add something to this response. I think this is a great question and a difficult one. We wanted to bring a product that is easy to use for the developers in whatever they are building, and that also meet the parameters for enterprise grade. And it's been a lot of the work that we've done over the past few years to understand how can we both be truly enterprise grade, but be easily usable by the developers. So it's our goal. I think that the future will tell if we completely hit the mark, but we're going to continue listening to both community, because at the end of the day, whatever is being developed by the developer community has to be run, and it has to be run at scale. And again, when I say scale, it's infinitely big and infinitely small. So that's definitely what we're trying to do, to appeal to both audience.
So, in the last few years, you released a lot of open source solutions, Zinco and, the S3 server and so on. And now this is a closed source solution. So, and looks like a departure from the, your strategy from the past. So what can you add on this?
Look, fundamentally, we want to open source as much as possible. We absolutely believe in open source. We believe in the role of open source for infrastructure. And candidly, Enrico, we also want to make money. And I have personally seen so much open source being abused. A few years ago, I actually personally went to many of our customers and said, well, okay, so if we open sourced everything, would you pay us the same amount annually? And many of our large customers said, no. We actually don't pay that kind of amount for open source. And so this was a setback for me, because, the market of providing free software is not exactly how I'm going to sustain the R&D that we're doing and being able to bring to the world this kind of product. So it's a balance. Let me, notice that all our Metal K8 layer, all the Kubernetes layer that we're providing is open source, has been open sourced a couple of years ago, and is actually pretty active in the open source community. So we will continue bringing open source technology to the world while preserving the ability for Scality to make money and continue financing its R&D.
So real quick, can I, not to be the devil's advocate here, but let me throw this in and just purely out of conversation, see where this goes. So one of the things that I caught on to, back to Justin's point, like the enterprise, it feels very enterprise driven. Not a problem. The comments that were just made feel very enterprise focused as well. Again, not a problem. The struggle I have, maybe just myself, is it feels like almost you need to pick a lane on where you want to go with this product. Either enterprise, which is cool, or DevOps-y writing. You know where I'm going with this. The whole DevOps open source movement that's been going on forever. I don't know. That's just where my head goes when I hear this, because I really struggle with, do I look at this because I look at it from an enterprise perspective? Yeah, the GUI looks great. But if I'm more focused on the other side, I really don't care about a GUI. I could care less if it has a GUI. I'm just curious where this conversation went. And we don't even have to talk about it now. It's just where, the reality is how many enterprises, big enterprises, HP's behind this initially. You know, how many big enterprises are going this route? You know, I don't know. Anybody want to chime in, or is that just like a really stupid question?
I mean, look, this is a debate that we're not going to close today. But first of all, many of our enterprise customers are fully embracing the DevOps world. And yes, part of this is the open source, but, you know, most of our customers, they really don't care about whether the software is open source or not. They care about whether it's agile for development for their developers. I mean, I'm talking customers who have thousands of developers in-house, and whether it supports all of their security and reliability and speed need. Okay, that's really what they care about. They're actually not asking us, are you open source, are you not open source? That's not a question that's being asked to us. But I would agree that this is a debate that's going to follow through for the months to come.
No, that's good. Like I say, it was just more of, you know, what you know, how do we talk to our customers and things like that when we start talking about the solution? If, you know, again, we can take that off.
There's another thing, Larry. I mean, today we showed the UI because the UI is easy to show. It's sexy. It looks good. We have, again, the UI is entirely built on top of API, and they're all documented. Except I don't know how to show this in a presentation like today. So I could show you a huge UI API documentation, but it wouldn't be very sexy.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Thank you.
Hey there, I've got questions. Barry here. Really enjoyed the presentation and the discussion by James and Joey as well around the kind of use cases and what's going on. Lots of discussion around kind of vertically aligned solutions, the factory and things like that. Are you working with any ISVs or with HPE with vertically aligned solutions or anything like that, where this may be pre-packaged as part of a bigger solution or anything like that?
This is Paul. Let me take that. So we have always viewed partners as part of the solution, right? Storage by itself rarely is the incomplete stack for the customer. We've had 100+ partners for Scality Ring on the ISV side, and we definitely see that as a focus here. We're already working with backup vendors and analytics vendors and you know, people that are packaging applications in the AI and ML space. We absolutely see it as part of what we need to do is to make sure that we work with them and that we're validated. In terms of bundling, there's some early discussions around that, but I think it would make sense in various spaces, including in analytics and backup.
I think for me, that's where the UI may come in. I mean, I've got customers that may be in the retail space that if they do need those kind of solutions would be important. The ISV would clearly want the API side of it to automate whatever their software is doing with it. But I just know the guys that I would be dealing with wouldn't have a clue what to be doing with APIs and things like that. They want to go, wait a minute, there's a problem in that store. Can I jump on it and see what's going on in that store? So I really like the demonstration of the dashboard and the API.
This is Mark here. I've got a two-part question. The first is light implies fewer lines of code, Paul. So if it's fewer lines of code, does that translate into lower latency? And before you answer that question, how much lower latency? And the second part is strategic. On the licensing, it's cloud native. This is where you're going after with the ARTESCA storage at this point. So if it's cloud native, are there any plans to do a pay-as-you-use type of licensing, or is it just a pure subscription model?
All right, let me take the first part of that, Mark. So you asked about performance and lightweight. And so the first part of the answer is yes, there is a lot fewer lines of code here. One of the things we made a really strategic decision not to do is to put a POSIX file system in this product. Ring has that. It addresses those use cases, and it was necessary to do that for the time and the place it was in. We are much lighter weight in terms of resource utilization. In terms of performance and latency, we're absolutely aiming for a different latency response point than we have in the past. Ring was actually always decent. It could actually achieve into the single-digit millisecond response times. We want to go way beyond that and to really leverage Flash in a more primary way. I don't have numbers immediately to share. One of the great things about HPE is they brought us a really expensive lab to do all this kind of performance testing in. We'll do it both in the lab and real world and share some results as soon as we have them. But yes, aiming higher.
I was going to add on to your remark there. So we can also sell this to you as a GreenLake contract, and it's metered usage under GreenLake, so you can have a pay-as-you-go model that way.
Just a quick question. I may have missed this in the main presentation. I wasn't sure, but you talked about kind of Ring as your traditional object store, for want of a better phrase. Have we got integration here? And if not, is it planned?
Yeah, so the integration of Artesca to Ring is that Artesca can view Ring in its namespace, in its storage services, and it can actually mobilize data between Artesca instances and Ring. So I could replicate, lifecycle, all of these policies that we add on top. Ring can certainly be a target or a source for any of those policies. So that's the level of integration we support right out of the gate.
Yeah, so you see this potentially as an enterprise. Maybe they've already invested in Ring. Maybe you're looking for something out on the edge, that Artesca would be the solution for that.
Yeah, we're already seeing opportunities in manufacturers, for example, that have small edge deployments, but 100 plus of them. The data wouldn't be interesting on its own, but in aggregate, it's great, and they need to filter and replicate that back to the core. So the combination makes a lot of sense in that world.